Well, welcome to another Watermelon Wednesdays. Let's go check out the chapel and see if we can scare up some music. Right this way. I think I hear somebody playing. All right, right this way. Well, it looks like Bruce Molsky and Tony Trischka. What do you know? My goodness. Bruce, Tony, what are you doing here?
Paul, what are you doing here?
Took a wrong turn off the highway and look at this beautiful place.
Oh, this is fantastic. You guys feel like going inside playing a gig?
It's kind of unexpected, but if you insist,
you
sure.
got enough tunes to do an hour or so?
We can fake it.
We have a couple of tunes.
Well, let's go inside.
Sounds good to me.
We can set up some mics and
let's go.
Do a show. What a treat.
Give it to you, 6 foot. 6 foot Trischka.
You can call me that.
Welcome to Watermelon Wednesdays, concert number 3 of the pandemic season of 2020. And we're very pleased to have with us 2 of my favorite instrumentalists and vocalists occasionally. Bruce Molsky on fiddle and Tony Trischka on banjo. Bruce also plays other instruments, which you'll be treated to later on in the show. I'm doing an intro, guys.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. All right, so they're very enthusiastic, so I'm not going to talk long because they'll throw me off if I don't get out of here. So anyway, I'm very delighted to have them here. They're doing more than most people to preserve one of my favorite parts of American culture, which is our music. And so I thank them for that and for being the good people they are. And you're in for a real treat. I also want to give a shout out to a Watermelon Wednesdays alum, Mike Barnett, an extraordinary fiddle player who had a stroke recently, and his people have mounted a GoFundMe campaign for Mike Barnett. So I believe you can, I would ask you to help support Mike. How old is Mike anyway, do you think? Any idea?
27, 28-ish.
No, really, he's under 30?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, anyway, he was a fiddler for Ricky Skaggs' band, and we wish him a speedy recovery. There's a GoFundMe site for him, GoFundMe Barnett, I suppose. So we ask you to support that. But now, turning back to where we are right now, I'd like to introduce one of the greatest banjo players in American banjo history, perhaps the greatest. And I would say the same for Bruce with regard to old-time fiddling. And certainly I have been fortunate enough to have some instruction from Bruce. And it's a great pleasure to know these guys, and it's and also a great pleasure to hear their music. So without further ado, please welcome Bruce Molsky and Tony Trischka.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
And puppy dogs too.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, go.
Thank you, each and every one of you. It's great to be here at the West Whately Chapel. What town are we in? It's not technically West Whately.
Whately.
It's just Whately.
Yeah.
Whately, we've been coming to, sorry. That's one of my favorite tunes to play with Bruce. That's Bruce there, I'm Tony, just to be straight about that. I've got the longer beard. And I had nothing else to do for the last 6 months. I figured I'd grow a beard. It's occupied all of my time, and I've gained about 2 pounds of weight from it. That's one of my all-time favorite tunes to play with this guy. One of my all-time favorite tunes, period. Salt River. And Bruce and I had a band called Jawbone for a little while. And this was sort of our theme song, I guess.
It was the theme song, yeah.
Is that standard tuning?
Oh, the last tune was in A-E-A-E for you fiddle people. This next one is in the very rare tuning of G-D-A-E.
Oh, wow.
Otherwise known as standard.
And my banjo's in G-D-G-B-D.
C-D-B. Yeah, right. Here's a little bit of the old Jawbone. 1, 2, 3.
Little old man came riding by, said, young man, your horse must die. If he dies, I'll take his skin. If he lives, I'll ride him again. Walk Jawbone and walk away.
little lighthearted, senseless journey into the abyss of romantic things we never experienced.
One of the greatest phrases I've ever heard. What you just
All
said.
smashed together into one sentence. So I'm going to play maybe a couple on my own here. And the first one is a more modern piece, but written kind of in an old-time style. It's written by a man named Craig Johnson, who was a dear friend, stalwart to the old-time community in Washington, D.C., where I lived for many years. And he had a great affinity for working people and their plight, especially country people. And this is all I can tell you is this is a very sad song. It's called Piney Mountains.
Sit down, buddy, we'll drink and smoke. Woman, don't you weep for me. My hands can't fiddle and my heart's been broke. You damned old Piney Mountain. Lost my fingers in the Galax mill. Buddy, sing a sad old song. And my heart got broke in the Upine Hills. Lord, and my time ain't long. I started out to logging when I was in my prime. Woman, don't you weep for me. Hitching up the spruce to the big drag lines. You damned old Piney Mountain, where the skidders start a-bucking as the gears come down. Buddy, sing a sad old song, making God's own thunder on the new cut ground. Lord, and my time ain't long. We was fighting over nothing and drinking too hard. Woman, don't you weep for me. Riding up to camp on the flat wheel car. You damned old Piney Mountain. 30 years of hanging on the old chain break. Buddy, sing a sad old song. Laid off and paid off in 58. Lord, and my time ain't long. Got sold to a scrap iron yard. Woman, don't you weep for me. I moved down Virginia when the times got hard. You damned old Piney Mountain. Lost my fingers to a steel bandsaw. Buddy, sing a sad old song. Now my fiddle just hangs untuned on the wall. Lord, and my time ain't long. And the trees have grown up on the logging road. Woman, don't you weep for me. And the wildflowers bloom where the big shays blowed. You damned old Piney Mountain. There's nothing left for me but to drink and smoke. Buddy, sing a sad old song. My hands can't fiddle and my heart's been broke. Lord, and my time ain't long.
Sometimes you have to choose between the logging accident and the railroad incident or the shipwreck. Today was just a lot of nice trees coming up here today. So let's play a couple old-time dance tunes. Maybe you've got a rug back home in audience land there that you can roll back. Thanks so much. The first tune was from Kentucky and was called Mike in the Wilderness. Could be Tony in the Wilderness.
Could be anything.
And the second one was called from a fiddler named Walter McNew. There's not going to be a quiz after the concert or anything like that, but it's nice to know where these things come from. And that was called Blackjack Grove.
Oh, that's Blackjack Grove.
Yeah, and by the
Mac Benford used to play that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the tunings.
Tunings, that was in AEAE, once again, like the first tune. And now I'm going deep into the netherworld of low-string fiddlage. To DDAD, or 3D tuning. And we're going to play a West Virginia tune, aren't we?
We surely are.
As soon as we get there.
I got a question.
Fire away.
So old-time fiddlers have all these different tunings, but classical fiddlers hardly ever go into strange tunings besides standard.
Well, that's partially true. In certain, there are pieces written for what they call scordatura, which is alternate tuning. And if you go back and listen to Bieber, the composer Bieber, he wrote a whole series of things in crazy violin tunings, and some others. So it's partially true, but most symphonic music is written for standard tuning, but not all of it. You know, I'm no expert, believe me. Some kinds of music are meant to be played, and some are meant to be admired.
And when this pandemic is finally over, if you've never been here to this wonderful chapel, you should come out in person. It's really an amazing place here. And we're so fortunate to be back here again.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Let's do it. Washington's March.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, on. Tony knows that he's already figuring out what he's going to play for a solo, but before he does, I just want to say live and in front of all these cameras and face masks that this is one of my musical heroes, and I grew up kind of trying to play a very kind of narrow sliver of traditional music, and Tony is one of a couple of people that dragged me outside of that box and helped me to realize there's a whole big world out there, and as he has musically for a whole lot of people. It's an honor to be on the stage with you, dude.
The same, Bruce. Thank you so much.
So play us something beautiful.
I don't know if it's beautiful, but no pressure. Well, John Henry, The Steel Driving Man. This is a slightly old-time version of it, not completely, but it goes to a 4-chord on in one place, which is more of an old-time construct. And then I'll go into Bonaparte's Retreat, which I learned from Kenny Kosek, and the last part I learned from John Hartford, actually. I had a great opportunity to just play banjo fiddle duets with John Hartford at this college where we were both teaching, and for about an hour just in this darkened schoolroom, just one after another. And I said, let's do Bonaparte's Retreat, and he played this 5th part, which was an Ed Haley edition, so, or not an edition, but to me it was an edition. So the last part comes from John, and then the last tune, I've recorded it, and I just had to make up a name for it because you have to name these things, but it never really stuck, and I still don't have a name for it. So for tonight, it's the Paul and Claudia jig. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so much, and howdy. I'm loving this banjo these days. I'm loving that other banjo too. That one's made by Deering. This one's made by Goldtone. And it's a Bailiff-like designed banjo called the Missing Link. And it's tuned down low. That banjo, usually that was D tuning with a fifth string up to A. But usually that banjo's in the regular G tuning. This is tuned to a C chord, open C chord. At the moment, you can tune it to anything, but that's what it is at the moment. And I'm gonna, since the pandemic started, I've written 6 tunes on this instrument. I've just gotten addicted to it. So I'm going to play one of them right now, and it doesn't have a name, surprisingly.
Are we playing?
Back to duo time.
I like it when you. I like it when you play.
I like it when you play. It's your favorite tune, Bruce.
I love this tune. I just need the lyrics in front of me, and then it's fine.
I put out an album a while back called Territory, and this was on there. There are all sorts of fiddle tunes that talk about fox chases in the old-time vernacular, and also in the black blues world there are fox chases also. And I heard a guy named DeFord Bailey, who was the first African American to be on the Grand Ole Opry back in the late 20s, early 30s, I think. an amazing, amazing harmonica player, blues harmonica player. And I had a chance to see a video of him playing from somewhere in the 50s, playing a tune called Fox Chase on the harmonica, and it totally blew me away, and I felt like I have to write my own Fox Chase. I was so inspired. And came up with this, and I decided to write some lyrics to it, and because I'm a banjo player and you have all these notes going all the time, when I write lyrics, they tend to be really verbose and crammed together. And Bruce has the great joy of trying to get all these lyrics out while playing the fiddle. So it's a great thing. Thank you very much for doing this.
We'll know.
Our friendship is somewhat at stake. It's survived a few other performances of this. We'll see how.
We came to West Whately in separate cars, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
How fast would you like to go, Tony?
As fast as you can sing those lyrics. Two, three.
He grabbed old Copper, his best hound, headed out where the hill went down. Why did the hawk start to fire the front of the blood? Cause he's got the hunter and the hunter's got the gun. Hound said, Fox, you're about to fall. Just a short while you'll be hanging on the wall. That hawk's front, the fox rocked up the double out. Splash across the stream where the ducks did swim. Get serious here. Said, keep your nose to the wind if I want to keep my skin. Sun went down, the hunter slowed. Copper fox chest brought the paddles and the toes. As he headed off, the moon shone down. That's the last fox saw the fox and the hound.
Yeah.
Oh, my favorite tune. Best song ever written. This is one
Okay,
of
so
Bruce's.
Tony and I had a band for a short while years ago with a wonderful guitar player, singer, banjo player, clog dancer named Paula Bradley, who lives actually not that far from here. And when we first got together to have our first band rehearsal, we tried a few. Everybody kind of throws their things out into the middle of the mix, and Tony turned to me and he said, "Well, let's do something you've written." And I said, "Well, I haven't written anything." And Tony looked at me with that Tony look, without the filtration of a giant beard, and said,
Askance.
and he said, "Askance." He looked at me askance. I don't know what askance is, but he said, "You have 1 week to write a tune, and I'm calling you every day." And I mean, you could see how scary he is. I wrote the tune. I was not going to get in trouble with Tony Trischka, so this is what I wrote. And at that time I was watching a lot of South Park on TV, and this little kid with the red parka always gets killed, and he always comes back. You know, his name was Kenny. So I named the tune "The Bastards They Killed Kenny," but that wasn't okay with Tony because he's a very polite person, and I'm not.
It's my delicate sensibilities.
So he muscled us into renaming it Kilkenny. So and it's now an Irish tune. That sounds Swedish. All right.
That's so much fun to play. I love playing that with you.
Thank you.
If I may say.
I appreciate it.
So much fun.
Well, not that I could be nervous about playing the banjo in front of Tony Trischka. I play clawhammer style though, so it's a little bit different.
Just a little bit different.
I'm gonna play something I just started playing recently, and in the key of double C on the banjo. Kevin Enoch made this banjo. He's a very, very fine banjo maker, just outside of Washington, D.C. It was in tune when I put it in the car.
What is the color of C?
It's just the name of a standard banjo tuning. It's C, G, C, D, G. This is actually, I've arranged the song written by a wonderful Scottish songwriter named Karina Paulward. And she's kind of a household name in the music scene over there in the UK. Fantastic, wonderful activist, a huge, huge heart that really comes out in the music. And this is called Daisy.
Daisy, darling, don't spread your arms so wide. Why don't you keep a little something inside? I know you think that hands are made for pulling us through, but there are people in this world who don't think like you do. Hey, Daisy, darling, don't give it all you can. Why don't you keep a few more cards in your hand? I know you'll only say a thing you believe to be true, but there are people in this world who don't think like you do. They don't think like you do. Some don't think at all. Take it all as read. Why don't you ask a few more questions instead? I know you think that everyone should be paid what they're due, but there are people in this world who don't think like you do. They don't think like you do. Some don't think at all. Hey, Daisy, darling, don't spread your arms so wide. Why don't you keep a little something inside? I know you think that hands are made for pulling us through, but there are people in this world who don't think like you do. And I know you'll only say a thing you believe to be true, but there are people in this world who don't think like you do. They don't think like you do.
She's something. Play a little quick something on the fiddle here. And in another oddball tuning, if you will. This is in E, D, A, E. So I've tuned my G down to E. I'm gonna play a little quick set of tunes, and here's a tune that I wrote very recently.
Yay!
That doesn't have a name either. So I hope we don't end up fighting over the same name for our new tune. And I'm going to follow it with something that was written by a fantastic clawhammer banjo player that I've had the huge pleasure to work with for many years. Her name is Alison DeGroot. And the name of the tune is Closing the Gap. She's been in the Mountain Drifters since day one. And I think it all goes something like this. We'll see on the other side of this. you very much. Well,
Incredible.
hope you're all doing well out there in Radio Land. What do you call it? Is it called Radio Land anymore?
Streamland.
Streamland. Streamland.
Yes.
Remember Freedom Land?
No.
No.
Where was that?
It was an amusement park in New Jersey, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
In New Jersey?
New Jersey, yeah. Not far from where you live, Tony.
Really? Palisades or something?
I think it was, well, it doesn't matter anymore. It's right up there with Adventurers Inn in Queens, but we're talking very, very local kinds of things here. Speaking of local, I live in Beacon, New York, a couple hours from here, and you might not know anything about Beacon, but if it sounds the slightest bit familiar, it's probably because of somebody who we all know and whose memory we cherish is Pete Seeger, who lived there since 1949, I think.
That's about right.
And he did a whole lot for our community and for the world, really. And Tony knew him quite well and was in Beacon doing some things and got me involved in a project. We all got to play and record together one time. And so we're going to play something that Pete wrote. And he said he wrote it after, I think, a Bahamian folk melody or something. This is in drop D tuning on the guitar, if anybody wants to know. I had a special request for tunings today, so that's cool. That's all good. Sorry. Dag. This guitar was made in 1940, so that makes it 80 years old. It gets a second to get right. Okay.
breaking down into smaller discussion groups again, I guess.
Doesn't get much smaller than one.
So speaking of Pete, I'm going to do a tune that he recorded on an album called The Goofing Off Suite, which came out in 1955. But first, at the end of the recording session that Bruce just mentioned that we got to do with Pete in Garrison, New York, which is just a little bit south of Beacon, and we're at the end of the session, and Bruce was going to, since he lived in Beacon, was going to give Pete a ride back to Beacon. And so I come out to say goodbye, and Bruce is in the driver's seat, and Pete's sitting in the passenger seat. And I'm starting to say goodbye, and Pete kind of looks past me and sees something, and gets out of the car and walks, 30 or 40 feet, and picks up this old broken headlight that was just sitting in the grass near the house where we were recording, and gets back in the car and sits down with it in his lap, because he was all about ecology and cleaning up the Hudson and all that kind of thing. He was so amazing that way, and he happened to see this headlight and wasn't going to let it just sit there, so he walked quite a distance, came back. And I said, Pete, would you like me to throw that away? He said, as long as you dispose of it properly. And he walked the walk. Anyway, so speaking of the Goofing Off Suite, as I just did, this is a tune that Pete recorded on there. It's an amazing album. You should all get it. It's on Smithsonian Folkways now, and it's on Spotify and Apple Music and all that kind of stuff. And it's a tune written by Irving Berlin, and it's Blue Skies, and what I'm going to play is what I transcribed Pete's playing on it from back in 1955. This is as close as I could get to the way he played it. So all this stuff is Pete Seeger, because you think of Pete as strumming, and strumming is a real art unto itself, and he was obviously great at it, and then he would do... that kind of folk style, which he called the basic strum. But then he really was an incredible banjo player, in addition to everything else. So I'm going to do Blue Skies pretty much note for note the way Pete played it back in 1955. Thank you, Pete. Now, here's a tune I wrote last week. Maybe you can help me with this. Mike Seeger plays an old-time song that's almost all harmonics. Two geese or ganders.
Oh, the wild gander.
Wild gander. It's like all harmonics. And one of my students, I have this online banjo school. That's not a plug, it's just a fact. And people send in videos and I respond to them, and he sent in this video of that particular tune, and I'd not heard it before. And I fell in love with it and decided that I wanted to write a tune that also used harmonics. And when I was done, it sort of had a Japanese flavor to it. And I decided to dedicate it to a dear friend of mine in Japan. I would tour Japan and he would be my guide over there. And he was also in the first Japanese bluegrass band to tour in the United States, Bluegrass 45. And he was the banjo player in the band. And they came over and played this Reedsville Bluegrass Festival in 50 years ago, actually, so 1970. And just a wonderful human being. So Sab Watanabe is his name. So this is Song for Sab. All right, what's next on the big show here?
Well, you know, we could do, since we skipped it, we could do Whiskey from Rockingham.
Oh, we did skip that, didn't we?
It's okay.
Yeah.
We didn't hurt his feelings.
Key of G.
How about that? We haven't had a drinking song tonight, so maybe it's time.
It's time.
Key of G. Not that key. That key. We hope you all are enjoying yourselves out there, wherever it is you are. Nice to be in such a nice part of the country, in a building that will soon be too cold to be inside of. Can't say I mind this time of year, though. The leaves are turning so beautiful, and
yeah, what a drive up here.
Yeah, all I can think of is that bad breakfast cereal I ate when I was a kid. It's all the color of Fruit Loops. I get my whiskey from Rockingham. Jeff, and kind of
get on out of here.
Call it a gig.
Set.
Call it a set. Thank you very, very much to Watermelon Wednesdays, even though nobody really knows what day of the week it is anymore. For certain.
True.
Thank you, Paul and Claudia.
Thank you so much
for everything.
Thank you guys.
For keeping this thing going.
And thanks to our technical crew also.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Josh and Kevin. Do not blow up in my face for the last number. This is an AEAE once again. It will be. How am I doing, Tony?
Perfect. Never better.
tell the joke about banjo players anymore.
Yeah. Well, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Just about how they spend half their time tuning and the other half of their time playing out of tune, because look at me. All right, thank you everybody very much. Here's a little bit of Little Rabbit. These are animal tunes. Animals of the land and animals of the sea.
There we go.
Followed by Jeff Sturgeon, who must have been a fish.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Wear a mask. Stay away.
Tony and Bruce, thank you so much for being here in West Whately and coming back. You've been here before. People, if you want to see another video of these guys, I think it's available on our website, so you've been captured before. And of course, these are odd times, so anyway, instead of an encore, I thought we'd have an interview. Although, maybe we should have had an encore instead of an interview. But at any rate, depending on what I ask, and we'll see how this goes. So let's see. My first question will be, you two guys strike me as people who play music from the South, but you strike me as sort of Yankee types. And I'm wondering how this Southern flavor got into your musical being, and so how did that happen? Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you grew up in Alabama.
No,
Not exactly.
I like to joke that I'm from the South Bronx. For me, it was the kind of attraction of just folk guitar in the very beginning, and being in New York City was kind of. I grew up at the tail end of the folk revival, which you might call the folk revival, and in the '60s was kind of my becoming aware, and even just hearing the kind of melodies that Bob Dylan played on the guitar were evocative of something that it just kind of resonated. And at that time, there were a lot of musicians from the South coming through New York, and Tony would remember this, you know, and you could go to the McBurney YMCA or any of the places in Manhattan and hear Bill Monroe. I heard Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys one time live, and I heard Ralph Stanley and Chubby Wise, and of course, Tex Logan, even though he was a Southerner, was also a MIT graduate engineer who worked at Bell Labs in New Jersey, so he came across and played across the river and played sometimes, and it just kind of gets into you. My big thing, and then I'll get off it, is that before there were so many radio stations that were divided into strict categories of music, there were 2 AM pop music stations, and if you wanted to hear the Beatles, you had to listen through the stuff that I loved, you know, all the Motown and all the folk music and the new and the New Seekers and Barry McGuire singing "Eve of Destruction," and then there was this folk music that just came across, and you never know what's going to kind of bite you in your behind, but I kind of went, wow, I like that, you know, and just kind of followed the journey.
Tony?
Yeah, I guess it was a similar thing. I came of age, well, not quite of age, almost of age, during the folk scare, as they say, the same thing, the folk revival. The very first album I ever, well, my parents were lefties. I was a red diaper baby, basically, and proud of it. And they would listen to Pete Seeger. That we had Pete Seeger records in the house. We had Weaver's records. We had the Almanac Singers, which was Pete and Woody, and Lead Belly. And so I grew up hearing that music and hearing banjo music, but the banjo didn't quite catch my ear till the very first album I got that I ever got, period, was for Christmas when I was 11, 12 years old, maybe 12 years old. And it was a Kingston Trio at Large album. And the first song on there is MTA, Charlie and the MTA, He'll Never Return. And there was a banjo solo on there by Dave Guard, their wonderful banjo player. And it was a kind of this, not quite Scruggs style, but pretty much fast picking. And there were 16 notes in there that just totally captivated me and led me on this path of, trying to find out where else can I hear more of this? And someone said, well, you should listen to Earl Scruggs. You know, I was unaware, being 12 or 13 years old, and I picked up Folk Songs of Our Land. Okay, I'm like folk music, here's Folk Songs of Our Land, because the bluegrass bands are trying to cash in on folk music. The Stanley Brothers had an album called Bluegrass Hootenanny, so because it was popular music. Anyway, so I discovered Flat and Scruggs, and that was fairly palatable. I think they did This Land Is Your Land or Pastures of Plenty on there, something like that. And then, who else? Oh, listen to Bill Monroe. And then I was full blown at that point. and started going down to bluegrass festivals in the first one in 1965, and that was kind of it. And there was a lot of folk music coming through Syracuse too. The Country Gentlemen came there, and Reverend Gary Davis, and on and on. So, and I went to the Newport Folk Festival in '63. When I was 14 years old, my parents actually let me go, and I got to see Doc Watson kind of appeared for the first time as Doc Watson, and Clarence Ashley, Doc Boggs, Skip James, Mississippi John Hurt. You know, I was really, really fortunate to see that kind of last generation. Anyway, so that really kind of infused my soul, if you will.
So Bruce, going back to you, you got infected by the same bug, the folk bug, and on it went. But you took a different turn. Tony went more into a bluegrass vein, and you went more into an old-time vein. Maybe people listening don't really get the difference or know much about old-time. They probably heard about bluegrass and Bill Monroe, but what is it about old-time that grabbed you?
You know, it was as a teenager who couldn't figure out what to do with his life. The social element was just as compelling for me as the music itself. And there was a great old-time scene in New York City at that time. There's a lot of your listeners might be familiar with the Red Clay Ramblers. And at that time, they were doing an off-Broadway show. This was the mid-1970s, called Diamond Studs. And on their night off, they and a whole bunch of us would gather at a bar in Lower Manhattan, the Galway Bay Pub on West Broadway, once a week. And it was all old-time musicians, and that was where I met a lot of people who I still stay in touch with today. And it was a scene, you know, and it became my scene. And a lot of them talked about, you know, in very romantic terms about going south to the festivals like Galax and Mount Airy and some of the smaller ones. And I went to Galax Fiddlers Convention for the first time in '74 and met more people. And all of a sudden it was just where I wanted to be. And I moved to Virginia in 1976.
Wow.
You know, and stayed for a long time.
Weren't you at one point in your life a mechanical engineer?
I was. I didn't play music for my main thing until 1997. But I worked in building construction, engineering trades for years. And it kind of got to where there were so many festivals that I was going to on the weekends and playing and everything. And it got to where people in the office would laugh when they'd see me on a Friday and say, "What are you doing here?" You know, so something had to give.
I think you made a good choice.
Well, I have no regrets at all.
Tony, did you have an alter life besides music?
No, not really. I worked in the children's zoo at the Burnett Park Zoo in Syracuse, New York, and I was a dishwasher. This is during the summers off during my college career. But I was always playing music. I think my first gig was when I was 12 years old, and I was on this talent show in Syracuse, and I sang Railroad Bill, and my voice hadn't changed yet. And I had a guitar teacher, and Railroad Bill, Railroad Bill. Excuse me, it was something like that. Shall I continue? Anyway.
Is there a recording?
There might be.
How much money you got?
And I had a guitar teacher, Karen Waldauer, and she was great. She was teaching me folk music before the banjo. And after I saw her for the next lesson, she said, "It was so embarrassing." She really said that. I almost gave up music at that point. Of course, I was 12 years old. But anyway, and it went from there. But I really started playing when I was 14. My first banjo teacher, John Gaines, who introduced me to Bob Dylan, actually, because he knew Dylan from the Village, and Dylan came to Syracuse, and that's a whole other story. But and he wasn't my main teacher, because he was teaching me clawhammer, the kind that Bruce was playing there. But he was gigging, and he wanted me to play with him. So here's this guy who's like 21 years old or something, and I'm traveling around New York State playing gigs with him as this hot young banjo player. I wasn't that good, but you know, he was good for 14 anyway, is what people would think. So I was doing it for a long time. And then after college, I'd already been playing music, but I just kept playing and have not stopped ever since.
So how did you two guys, how did your paths cross?
I don't remember the first time.
We've been trying to figure that out. We've known each other, feels like forever.
Yeah.
And we must have run across each other in the old-time / bluegrass confluence in New York, probably maybe even the South. There was a festival, an annual festival in Lower Manhattan, the South Street Seaport. You were there, weren't you?
Yeah.
I went there every year for several years. This is like 2 renovations ago when the South Street Seaport was a really sketchy neighborhood. And but they had out on the pier, they had stage set up and they had bands come and play. And you know, it's been a long time ago, but I could swear that I met you there.
It could well have been, yeah.
So there's one thing I thought of when you were you were about to, you said something about you give lessons online, and you didn't want to be commercial, so you let it rest at that. But I think people should know that you both give lessons online, and I want to ask you how people can avail themselves of your online teaching.
Well, I'm with a company called Artist Works, and they've got something like 30 schools, jazz, rock, classical, and they've got a whole bluegrass school there with Daryl Anger and Mike Marshall and what's his name? Brian Sutton. Thank you, Brian Sutton. Sorry about that, Brian. Senior moment. Anyway, and it's a great thing, this online teaching thing, and we work in different schools, as it were, but people can sign up. It's the Tony Trischka School of Banjo, and if you Google Tony Trischka, it's one of the first things that comes up. It's Artist Works is the name of the company I'm with, but it's my own school. And I've got over 50 interviews with people like Steve Martin and Bela Fleck and Earl Scruggs and J.D. Crowe and on and on and on. And there are 270 or something like that lessons from here's how you hold the banjo to really fancy stuff with Bela Fleck and some of my more progressive things. And a lot of Scruggs things. You know, it's a bluegrass banjo school primarily, but there's some other things along the way. And then people can send in a video, and I will respond to it and critique it in a very gentle way.
Do you ever do live Zooming with anybody?
Oh, those kind of lessons? No, I have not yet. I have not yet, because this school keeps me really busy. Yeah. You know, every day I'm on there, working with people and that sort of thing. But it's a great thing that Artist Works does, and especially now. Yeah. As soon as this pandemic hit, suddenly my membership just went up because people were home and just learn to play the banjo, or fiddle, or whatever it is. Anyway, that's my school.
What about your school, Bruce?
I do a few different things, and one is, kind of analogous to what Tony does with another online teaching outfit that is a slightly different presentation. It's called Peghead Nation. It's pegheadnation.com. But there are a lot of teachers and a lot of folk-based genres on Peghead Nation as well. And my thing is we put out pre-recorded lesson videos, a tune a month, broken down into great detail. And I try to build the tune so that people at different levels of experience can all find something that's useful to them. So we start generally with a melody, talk a lot about learning music by ear, the oral tradition, and listening for what we call the melodic rhythm in the melody, and using the bow with the fiddle as the way to express the rhythm underneath the melody, and then building ornamentation. And people can go as far as they want. They can take little bits of the lesson and just keep working away at them. And we don't have the sending the videos thing in, but we have a blog and people write in with questions. And I've been doing that for, I guess, 5 years now, and that's been wonderful. I also teach a few workshops through venues. We're doing a 4-week series of getting ready to go into my 5th one in banjo, old-time banjo, and one in fiddle, and that's with Cafe Lena. It's a wonderful venue, and we've started an adult music program there. And then in fact the next one is starting next week, next series. And so I present occasional workshops like that, and I'm also on faculty at Berklee College of Music, which really is my main thing. And that's a huge inspiration, seeing all these youngins come through. And
oh, I know, we have a lot of graduates here.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. In fact, I know them. Yeah. But it's great, and just to see, give them some tools and just the nuts and bolts of what what traditional music is and what it means, not only how to do it, but what it is and why, and let them take that into their creative process out in the world, and that's really exciting to me.
And your ongoing gig right now is with Mountain Drifters, right?
Well, of course we're on hiatus because of COVID, but the band still exists. It's kind of it's dormant right now, but Allison is back in Canada, and Stash is on the West Coast. But right now we're just kind of wait and see. We're in touch all the time, and we'll just have to see.
How about you, Tony? What's cooking?
No gigs. I'm doing some recording actually in 2 days with Ethan Satyawan, who's been here before, I believe, and Daryl Anger and some more Berkeley kids. And I have a new album coming out on, it looks like January 29th. I think it's pretty safe to say. It's an album called Shall We Hope is what it's called, and it's a Civil War based story that I've been working on for about 12 years and has finally come to fruition and is going to finally come out.
Well, that's great. I'm so glad that you could spend this time talking as well as playing, because I think, you know, the people out there in, I'd say Radio Land or whatever land, Screenland, Streamland, you know, want to hear more. And I'm only sorry all you people out there couldn't be here today, because it's a different experience, you know, being able to do this live. And I'm trying to do concerts live in this venue because I just think that adds to the flavor and the excitement of the music that is as close as you can get to live music without having real live music. And so,
well, you got a beautiful place here. When the fog lifts and when we're on to the next chapter, I hope to see all these seats full again, because we really appreciate what you do.
we'll get you back. And by the way, out there in Streamland, it's very important that you support these guys and keep it going. And so I urge you to be very generous with your donations. Bruce and Tony will get all the proceeds from the concert. So please be generous. And thank you for watching. And thank you guys for playing. It was great to have you here as always.
Thanks, Paul. So appreciate it.